Welcome back to the Writer's Room. My name's Trina Wilcox for Runner Radio. And today we're talking with Joan and Jane. You're known as the Therapy Twins. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
So, you guys have been doing a lot of mental health studying, if you will, starting with experimenting with yourselves, right?
Well, more than that, Jane was in psychiatry since 1982. Nah, she was a nurse first, then went into psychiatry. I've been in psychiatry since 84 as a nurse, and then later as a provider. I followed in Jane's footsteps.
So we've been psych nurses for a really long time.
Since the 80s.
And if you mean by experimenting,
Oh, and of course.
I have a sneaky suspicion I went into the profession to try to find out what diagnosis I might have and how can I fix it, of course, because I wasn't happy.
Yeah, I forgot that part.
Yeah, I wasn't in a good place. And then at some point we weren't getting along. It was a nightmare.
So, what made you? A lot of times people just deal with it or don't even think to investigate why they're feeling that way. So, what made you just go ahead and think, no, this is not okay? I'm going to do something about it.
Well, this is Joan. What happened with me is I used to think I had intermittent explosive disorder, but the psychiatrists that I used to work with used to say, no, Joan, I don't think you do. But, even my parents kept wanting to call the cops.
But not when you were younger.
No, and when I was younger, we threw rocks at cars. It wasn't much better, Jane. But I realized later, I wasn't married anymore. I wasn't getting along with my twin. I was looking around. I really didn't have any friends. So I realized maybe part of what was going on was a little bit my fault as well, which is so hard to realize. So then I did. I got help at age 35, I believe. I started to get some help. Yeah. You?
Yeah, I mean, right around the same time, and just reiterate, my life wasn't going too well. And so we decided, I think not simultaneously, but very, very quickly, we were both in therapy, I think around the same time, both having, being on certain medications to see if that worked. And, we just got so frustrated with the whole thing because a lot of things work on about 70% of the population. A lot of medicine works for about, 70, 80%. And then there's those other people, the failures. And, we do have a bit of science in our background, and we realize we are pretty much the outliers or the ones that aren't going to respond and this and that. So writing a book about our experience as well as trying to come out with our own mental illness to kind of disarm the nation. I mean, we are former therapists. We do have, science backgrounds, and just to let people know, you do wake up in the morning, you're still alive, even if somebody looks at you a little bit differently now that you said, I suffered from really bad depression or whatever.
Right.
Did you have trouble coming to terms with that yourselves?
Mine wasn't, what, for me, mine was so clear cut trauma that people actually, my father, I found out after he died, defended me behind my back. My husband at the time was saying, I can't live with somebody who screams, over, I don't know what the heck he was doing, but it was a trigger of something. And I would scream. And my father said, could you give her a break? She's been through a lot, because the two of us, we were supposed to die when we were born, and we were given our last rites 2 different times because they truly did expect us not to make it. So the nurses named us, which is so cute because then we became nurses.
Yeah, that might really be the reason we went into it.
Because our parents both thought we were going to be a boy and a girl twin because all the doctors were telling them that. Of course, they probably didn't have true ultrasound back in 1960. I don't know. So we should know that as the history of nurses. But anyway, we survived, and apparently the incubator was a lot worse than we downplayed it. A whole month in separate incubators. Today, they try to put the twins together.
And today, mommy and daddy don't just stand behind glass. They get to go in and touch their babies. Even if they had to wear gloves, there's a touch there. And we didn't get that. So when Joan says we threw rocks at cars when we were little budding antisocial girls.
Yes.
But our family is, strong, kind of loving, even if you think they're not loving, they are.
Yelling
Italian heritage. Yeah.
So do you have
we were loved.
siblings? Do you have other siblings?
We have the best older sister. What she represented for us growing up was Cinderella, because she was beautiful and was compared to the actress, as well as Susan Sarandon later in life. And she was born with the glass half full.
Absolutely.
She apparently is terrific in a crisis because I was still having convulsions when I was an infant, and our mom had postpartum depression, and Jane was dissociating from being in an incubator and not poked and prodded. So Lori was called the second mother.
Yes.
So after our parents died, well, actually before that, they moved to Florida. Our parents, I started calling our sister Lori mommy, just because I knew she was a second mother. She's wonderful.
So what was life growing up like for you guys?
A lot of screaming, I think, but it was lovely. A lot of senses of humor.
Let me, this is Jane for a second. I have resolved almost everything from my childhood, but because I wasn't as sick as Joan, my mom told me many, many years later, I think I was in my 50s, complaining, which is embarrassing that I was whining about my parents' parenting. That she said, Jane, I always thought you could take care of yourself. And for me, that was the apology I was looking for. That was the explanation for why I was sort of always in the background without as much attention. At one point, my dad always, he knew where Joan worked, but he didn't really know where I worked. I had a big chip on my shoulder. So growing up, I would say our dad was a critical bully. But when I say that, it's more like The Honeymooners with Ralph Cramden. So it was a comedy, which saved him in many, many ways.
Yeah.
And our mother was like
Donna Reed.
The Donna Reed show. If the Brady Bunch were not a broken home, or they were a new blended home, we were the appearance of the Brady Bunch because of our mother. It really. We used to bring what's called the host down. We were raised Catholic, but forgive us if we don't know a lot. There's the host is brought down, and we were the good-looking family. Our mother and father were both very good-looking people, and we already told you about Lori. The stragglers back here, we were tall, thin, gawky, but we would carry that thing, the host down.
And
to
only
the priest.
4 people were supposed to be carrying it down, but we were twins, so they separated the
Yes,
cup with the saucer.
Yeah.
So one carried the saucer.
Yeah. So I was definitely reinforcing the glass was half empty growing up. I really was. Yeah. Very, very negative.
When did you guys decide that you were going to take all of this and put it into a book?
Well, this is Joan. I wanted to be a comedian and act, and I did. And I was so anxious that, I just did it in the background for holidays and whatever. I never did stand up, but people believe that it's like stand up because Jane will say something like, "You were on last night," or something like that. So I did want to do that. Jane wanted to do radio, and somehow we compromised because of the anxiety and depression over a book, which is bizarre because neither one of us found solace in books. I did not growing up. I had a hard time reading.
We were not readers.
No one.
No, science and math, please. No.
Right.
That's what brought all my grades up.
Yeah. And we might have had ADD, but no one would ever be able to tell that back then as well.
So we decided to write this book as more of a
comedy,
a comedy, but a way to help other people if they weren't getting along, because we weren't getting along.
Right.
So we share some of our
tips.
We shared some of our traumas, but in a comedic way, if you can imagine.
If you can do it. Yeah.
In fact, people would come in laughing, saying that, at Joan's expense. They were laughing at things that happened to Joan, but the nervous laughter, And then what we decided was the tips that helped us get started on our journey, because all the self-help books out there, or if you want to do cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, these are difficult courses
and words to say
when you're not feeling well, right? Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. So we gave the few tips that got us started that are doable,
like really,
really
simple,
easy.
Because it's hard to look at yourself. It really is.
Yeah.
I think.
So you really found it therapeutic to write, even though you're not readers, but it was a way for you to it was a little cathartic to just get those things out. And And did you guys, what was the process like? Were you note takers? Did you exchange drafts?
Well,
once in a while?
we're definitely paper and pencil
and pencil.
girls. You know, we graduated high school in 78. So, you know, we actually know how many words a minute we typed from the olden days,
Yeah.
right? Which is terrible.
And we had to go to the library.
Yeah, it's just terrible.
And then copy the articles page by page.
I remember when there was no whiteout, you know.
Oh, I've lost yet. All right. So we glitched out a little bit, but you're back. You were talking about being in the library and you had to actually, old school.
Oh, I actually had to find the parking space, get into the library, I had to have assistants. You had to get the articles and then pay for the copies front and back. I found it really difficult back then. It's wonderful these days how you can get a file off of the internet.
But
it's
we
wonderful.
wrote everything on, I mean,
Pencil and paper.
I'm telling you, not even a notebook. It was pieces of paper. And then we were cutting pieces of paper and taping them together. And we would always have a fight. Hopefully not, and a few in public. I think there were a few waiters or
they were
bartenders that
remember us.
They remember us very well. And we would have an argument over, like, I think it was our ego, where I was like, oh no, not that story. If we're gonna portray that, I wanted it to be my story, of course, or something like that.
Or the ending that you want. If you were in it, why don't you get to? I thought the winners always wrote the history books. I thought
somebody said that.
So yeah, we fought a lot.
So do you see yourself doing it again, putting out more books, another book?
We are almost finished with the second book. The first book slams us really, really hard on our immature coping skills and how whatever we went through. It really does. The second book is a little more difficult. So that's why the first book is so easy. The second book is a little more difficult because it was difficult for us as well. Jane mentioned that word. That word, ego, has the way. It knows how to ruin everything in your life. So what we're calling the next book is, well, we are from 1960. The ego has landed, because that's what Neil Armstrong or somebody said when they landed.
Yes. It was
the eagle, right?
It was Neil Armstrong, and it was when we made it to the moon, if we really made it, which I think we did.
So that one is so difficult.
Is it still written with those same humor and everything that you put in the first, or is it a little more serious?
Absolutely. If it's not funny, it won't get in there. I mean,
well, every so often there's something in there that might, tear up, because even I teared up. I don't remember anything as a baby, but the stories I had heard were harsh. So when I read about even myself, I thought, oh, how sad for that little girl. I wasn't even thinking it was me, but yeah, it must have been sad for a little girl to have. Oh, I forgot to tell you why. I was born with a brain tumor. And they had to operate at 6 months old. So I had to go home and continually have the convulsions until I was old enough or at a certain weight in order to operate. And then I have a huge scar on my head with no hair on it. And that was a problem in school.
Do you see how I just had to go take care of myself off to the side somewhere, because she was very sick. And then not only our mom was attentive, Lori had to be, because she was mommy's little helper. So often Lori will just want me to kind of just go back in the corner and be quiet while she makes sure that Joan is okay.
Yes, I love it.
And that happens in our adult lives. It is really amusing to watch.
Yeah.
So how long did it take for your mom to kind of resolve the postpartum, or did she? Was it just something she kind of swept under the rug?
Well, she's so cute. Yeah. She called it the baby blues, because if you gave her a medical term, she was not going to agree to it. And back in the day, that's what they called it.
Yeah.
And she may or may not have been on medicine. We are not.
No, I'm sure. Before she died, I said, Ma, how did you get out of that sadness? She said, the doctor gave me something, Joan, and it took it all away. And I said, you were on an antidepressant, is what I said.
Right.
And she said, no, I wasn't. So we have no idea what that doctor gave her, but it was certainly something to treat postpartum. So that's cute.
But she did say that she cried for 3 full years.
Oh.
And that was just to express how overwhelming 2 little premature twins, one being sicker than the other. It was just a nightmare, I guess, for both of our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody wants to go through that. And it's thank you for sharing your journey and making trying to make sense of mental health issues and going through them. What else do you want to share about writing and your publishing and speaking to other writers out there that are going through the process?
Well, writers out there, here's, coming from someone that, I made National Honor Society having never completed reading a book for my 4 years of high school. And like I said, math and science were our saviors. So one time I was at the self-help thing, a conference, and somebody who had written a book had said, all you need to do is get yourself a notebook, a journal, a pad, anything that's pleasing for you and works for you, and then a writing instrument, so a pen or a pencil, that's nice. And then they said, leave it on a table or something that you will walk by every single day.
Yeah.
And as soon as you're inspired with a thought, just jot it down. Don't worry if it doesn't go. And then they said, in a year you will have a book. And I kind of think that's how we were able to do it. And now with Amazon and the self-publishing, and so there's more to follow, I'm sure, with that. Anyone that has any computer skills, we are very bad at that, but the people with better computer skills can just do it a lot more easily.
And I think too, if you have a story to tell that might help somebody else, because apparently our book has blocked 2 suicides that some of the parents had told us while we were still in practice. And unfortunately, that's not in a review. But what I would say is, if you have a story to tell and you think it could help even one person, go ahead and do that, because you never know. Sometimes some people have to be told the same scenario or style of life 6, 7, 8 times before they think, oh, maybe I am spiritual. And I'm talking about myself.
Yeah, it's something you can relate to, and that can help in so many ways. Is there anything else that you want to share that I haven't thought to ask you?
I want to share something, because I was the twin who had a very hard time getting better, because I was so resistant and very concrete in my thought process at times. So I had a hard time understanding certain self-help books. Jane treated me. I had a very bad temper. Jane had a dream that our nanny said, could you just treat Joan through compassionate eyes? And what Jane did was she changed the way she interacted with me. And at first I thought, oh my God, what is this lying bitch conniving to do behind my back? I really didn't trust her. And instead what happened was I started responding or reacting differently, and it changed the whole process. So if something doesn't change, nothing will ever change. So if you're unable to get better, ask one of your friends to start talking to you differently. Anybody who wants to be an actor gets to do it, because really, what mental health, the best way to do it, it's habits. You actually have to relearn a habit to be positive. You have to relearn a habit to help others or help yourself.
And I had to kind of teach myself how to view Joan through compassionate eyes.
Because it was tough.
At that point, I was feeling a lot of stuff, but not compassionate or loving. And you start with like 5 minutes. And sometimes it's a matter of just being quiet and not responding to everything that you think is an attack. And then you build up from there. And when you see the change in the other person, it sort of motivates you to do it more.
Yes.
I call it like, I know we're siblings, but with anybody, just pretend you're on a date.
Yeah.
When we all go on that first date, even the second date, we're not doing certain things, like saying, why did you do something so stupid? We don't really, we're not getting a second date like that. So,
right. Like nobody's using dental floss on a date. Yeah.
And this may be way deeper than, we were planning to go, but you said, have that compassion. And I think that's important, but how do you know when to draw the line? There's compassion, and then there's enabling bad behavior for that person and for yourself, not protecting yourself like you've tried and tried. How do you see the difference?
Well, when I say start with 5 minutes, it could be the first 5 minutes of an interaction that you're having with that person. And usually an argument, it usually takes time for people to start rubbing each other the wrong way, and they're, throwing knives verbally. So I found that in the first interaction, like I just did this with our sister Lori, who, God bless her soul, if she listens to this, she's going to realize, 1, that she knows we had a little argument recently, and 2, she knows we got through it. And that's always very important to us, the way we were raised. And so never, ever would I allow somebody, in fact, with Lori, when I felt she was too much for me, during that Discord we had recently had, I left the situation. You know, you have to find yourself an excuse. I've got to go. It was great seeing you. Bye-bye. So you don't,
Yep.
you know, you still keep your boundaries around what's appropriate for you or not. I'm talking about those little comments where, you know, someone might say, you know, I'll just say for myself, because I am, and this used to push my buttons, is someone might say, you know, Jane, you really do view the glass half empty, you know, don't you? And, you know, I would want to defend myself that I'm working on it, you know? So when I say those first 5 minutes, the next time we saw Lori is I greeted her with such, you know, eye contact, hi, Lori, a hug. And then I did sneak in a compliment for the dinner she made us. I tried to do that.
Or like my ex-husband did, he trained me like a dog, because we were married for 16 years and it was wonderful. And then we split together peacefully on the same page. But what he used to do is when I would start with my escalation 0 to 60, screaming with, I guess, irrational stuff, he used to just walk out and leave, and I'd hear the car go.
Yeah, he didn't say, gotta go, Joan.
Yeah.
He just
Yeah.
left.
And I was the abuser. I'm the one who, in a relationship, there weren't men abusing me. And if they were abusing me, I egged that shit on and got into their faces and made that happen. And I'll tell people this: we all go to what is familiar to us. People will say terrible things about women that stay with a battered or abusive man, you know, if you were battered. What I want to say is, did I go for that person who I knew would eventually, you know, abuse me back? Absolutely. So what did I go for? That's how I grew up. I grew up in a violence to say, okay, it was major surgery and being born like that. But then I was beaten and mugged and then raped. So I think with the violence, if you're used to that, that's why I think so many people coming out of poverty that see so many things, what happens to people when they're poor, that also, or an orphanage, that can bring you to your knees with the trauma that they've had. So don't be hard on yourself. There's always a way to change. Yeah. But always remove yourself from violence, like what people had to remove themselves from me. Thank you.
Always a way to change. Very good. Where can people go to get your book and learn more about you, ladies?
Well, for right now, you can get the book for free. It is an ebook, and if you have Kindle, it's for free. If you don't, it might be $3.99, because it's a short book. Because remember, it's ADHD friendly, and it is real funny. Because if it wasn't funny and smooth coming out of our mouths
and brief, we
Yes.
figured we'd lose everybody. And we really are honored that at least 2 people we know of have not suicided.
and the book is called Under the Hood: Therapy Twins, how we hotwired our brain, calmed the fuck down, and let that shit go. Because it was hard, but we did it.
Good. Very glad you did. Thank you for sharing. Looking forward to your next book too. Hope everything goes wonderful. Thank you again for sharing.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.